A very good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Lord. Thank you so much for joining for this media briefing, which will deal with recent developments surrounding the Government Industrial School. The Minister of Home Affairs and Information, the Honorable Wilfred Abrams, and the Minister of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, the Honorable Kirk Humphrey, will make statements and then take questions from members of the media. Minister Abrams will begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Recent events unfolding as they did have caused us significant concern. As Lisa indicated, we are looking at the concerns into the Government Industrial School, and we are also looking at addressing the concerns about Dodds Prison. Now, if I start with the Government Industrial School, the Government Industrial School has been plagued for many years with allegations of all kinds, allegations of abuse, mismanagement, antiquated policies and practices that were in convention with the UN rules for protection of juveniles deprived of their liberty. And we recently had two instances where wards of the institution, in one instance, sought to abscond, and in the second instance, actually were successful in absconding from the institution. Now, a lot of people have had a lot of things to say about the Government Industrial School. And I'm hearing all of them. I'm hearing all of them. And at the center of this, for me, is my concern for the well-being of the wards who are in our care. The young ladies who are at the Government Industrial School at Barrows in particular, many of them come from troubled circumstances. Many of them, they don't want to be there. They form part of our justice system, our juvenile justice system, and either are remanded into the care at Barrows in St. Lucie, or they're serving some type of sentence at Barrows in St. Lucie. But in any event, they are at St. Lucie and they're under the care and control of the Government of Barbados and the Ministry of Home Affairs. It is in our interest that the young ladies who are at Barrows and the boys who are at Dodds get the best care possible. They're children. I have heard all sorts of comments swirling in social media, in the traditional media, about the wards of the two schools. I've heard information on their backgrounds. I've heard speculation as to why they're there, the types of persons they are, the types of homes they come from, even down to snippets of their medical history. In some cases, completely speculative, in many cases, unfounded. And it has to stop. It has to stop. We have to bring some order back to this situation. I have heard the allegations of abuse, and I'm concerned about them. I've heard the allegations of mistreatment, and I'm concerned about those. I've heard the allegations of bullying, and I'm concerned about those. We're dealing with a Victorian-era institution in the 21st century Barbados. The thinking that initially informed the setting up of the Government Industrial Schools, we've moved past that sort of penal and punitive thinking. We are now trying. It is not about punishment of the wards or our institutions. It is about trying to help them, trying to give them a voice, trying to reinforce positive thoughts with them, trying that when they come out of the institutions, that they are better persons and better able to function in society. We have many positive stories coming out of the institutions. But then we also are all aware, and we hear a lot of other allegations that are not so pleasant. The recent focus, the recent situation concerning the absconding of the young ladies from Barrows in St. Lucie has thrown up a lot of issues that bear immediate investigation and attention. Our initial investigations, surface investigations into what informed or what may have caused the young ladies to take the approach that they took, and even certain policies and procedures at the school have been have yielded some serious concerns for us that we cannot possibly ignore. I, myself, before the young ladies, absconded with it and spoke to every single one of them. And we did this because we care. I did this because I care. I am concerned about the state of affairs at the government industrial schools. I am concerned about our curriculums at the schools. I am concerned as to whether they're getting the proper medical and counseling treatment, because many of the wards in our care have come there because this is a very difficult interview for me, because I have to be able to talk to you, the members of the public. I have to be able to talk to and answer questions from the press, but I am bound by the need to protect as much as I can the personal information, the medical information, the personal circumstance of the wards under our care. I don't have the latitude, as some people do, to fling about accusations and there be no consequences to what it is I say. So I'm trying to get my message across while preserving the dignity of those who are under our care. We cannot, I cannot ignore the situations going on at the schools. Minister Humphrey will speak later and advise you as to the developments in legislation to bring us more in line with 21st century thinking, the new child protection legislation, the juvenile justice legislation, the fact that we have had an investigation done by UNICEF into some of the operations at the school and recommendations for protocols, many of which have actually been accepted as well. But once again, we're dealing with an archaic institution in an archaic building that was not necessarily or does not necessarily contemplate the rehabilitative aims of juvenile justice at this point in time, or child protection. The bottom line is, we have to investigate all of the complaints and all of the issues. As I said, when we went in to the school following the abscondment, and I spoke to a number of members of staff, and I also took a look and we broke down all of the protocols, all of the procedures, all of the things that happened, what the girls' daily routine was from the time they woke up to the time they went to sleep, what reinforcements are put in place, because it can't just be about discipline, it also has to be about helping and building. I'm concerned by some of the practices that are there. I'm concerned that we can do better. I'm concerned that better must be done. And while we are awaiting the promised legislation, the fact is there are some things that need to be addressed now. Recently, some new suggestions and allegations have also come to light that have to be investigated now. As a result, I have decided to have a departmental inquiry into the operations at the government industrial school. A full departmental inquiry to address all of the issues that we know are on the table, to address the policies and practices at school, to address things like the curriculum, to address extracurricular activities, to address mentorship, to address all of the things that touch and concern these young ladies. And this is not one of those investigations that go into perpetuity. There's a fixed time for dealing with this, because we accept that it is not too soon to conclude this investigation, that this has to be done, this has to be given the priority and all of the resources that the government can put at it at this point in time to get to the bottom, in particular, of the most recent allegations. I want to assure everyone that we are going to fully investigate and speak with everyone concerned, everybody whose name has been mentioned. There is going to be, once we announce the departmental inquiry, we're going to set up a line and an email contact which will circulate to the public, so persons who have information that we don't have are free to contact us so that their concerns can be investigated as well. We are looking at, nothing is going to be swept under the carpet in this investigation. At the end of this, based on the findings, recommendations are going to be made and actions are going to be taken, and we're going to follow those findings wherever they go. And I also wish to say that we're going to leave no stone unturned in getting to the bottom of all of the allegations, so that when we are finished, we'll be able to report fully to Barbados. We'll be able to report to the parents of the young ladies. We'll be able to speak to young ladies and say what we found and what is going to happen next. We'll be able to take action against anyone found to be in breach. If people are exonerated, then they will be exonerated. But we are going to get once and for all to the bottom of all of the allegations swirling in relation to the government industrial schools. And this is not just in relation to the government industrial school at Barrows, right? We're also looking as well at the boys' institution to make recommendations for programming to better service them and service their program. As I said, reforms are coming. We already heard the cries of the public of Barbados. We already took advice from UNICEF. The Barrows School is going to be closed. We are looking to move the young ladies from Barrows to a retrofitted facility at Dodds in St. Philip, which they will share with the boys once the proper construction work has been done and the retrofit done to enable the girls to be properly separated from the boys in the facility. But that is a priority for our ministry at this point in time. Cabinet on Wednesday last week approved us to start to enter the contract and to start the retrofit as quickly as we can. So we also, when we complete this move, we want the young ladies to be moving in to a facility that can better accommodate them, with programs that are more suited to their needs, with services that better facilitate what it is that they need to accomplish and assist them in becoming the best that they can be and addressing their concerns. If they have psychiatric concerns, then they must get the proper psychiatric assistance. If they have psychological concerns or complaints, then they must have the psychological interventions that suit what their complaints are. It is our intention that when they move, they're moving in to as optimal a circumstance as we can do for them. But in the interim, until such time as that is done, we will, based on the findings coming out of this inquiry, departmental inquiry, we will address the things that we can in the shortest possible order. As they come up, we're going to address them. For instance, one that is going to be addressed immediately is going to be medical services on call for both institutions, so that anybody getting sick at the institution does not have to wait on an ambulance to take you to either the QEH, A&E, or for medical care. But we're going to have doctors on call who can actually get it there in a much shorter time, so that their needs can be addressed immediately. There's so much more you can say, but I think you get the point of where we're going. In relation to the government industrial school, actually, I'll pause right there and I'll touch briefly on Dodds Prison as well. Dodds Prison as well, we've had some complaints and some concerns about the operations at Dodds. Where staffing is concerned, there are issues that have been raised about the recruitment processes, the promotion processes, treatment of staff accommodation. We've had issues in relation to concerns raised in relation to inmates about the medical care, about protection of inmates when they're in transit or attending court or clinics. We've had a number of concerns raised in relation to the operations at Dodds Prison. So it is an opportune time as well to do a departmental inquiry into the operations at Dodds Prison to address a lot of the complaints that we have there. It's two separate departmental inquiries with two separate panels. With respect to the government industrial school, the chair of that panel will be Mr. Oral Williams. Oral Williams, you would know, is a former deputy commissioner of police and an attorney at law, and he will chair that panel. Also with him will be Tessa Chatterton-Shaw. She's an educator who has managed organizations focused on HIV prevention, drug and alcohol abuse, and she's a part-time lecturer at UE. And also there would be Corinne Kennedy Tate, the former principal of Queen's College. As I said, one of the big things we're trying to do is to as well develop a curriculum that facilitates the education of the wards at the government industrial schools. With respect to the prison, that inquiry is going to be chaired by Mr. Philip Pilgrim, QC. He's a well-known attorney in Barbados. He was the president of the Industrial Court of Antigua and Barbuda, and he is known for a very strong judicial temperament and very, very sound intellect. So we're happy with him. Also, there will be Dr. Lisa Jaganoff. She has a PhD in social works, and she's a former youth commissioner. And also as well is Dr. Akentulove Corbin, who's a senior lecturer in the Department of Management Studies at Cayfield campuses. Because in relation to the prison, it's not just a judicial or justice focused inquiry. It has to do with things like procurement, staffing. So some management component has to come in there, because in many parts of the world, prisons are a business. In Barbados, prisons are still run by the government, but we have to put the proper procedures and protocols in place to ensure that every aspect of prison life is as painless to those who have to be there as it can be. And to wrap it all up, we are lucky to have gotten the assistance of Dr. Corinne Bailey, who will be a technical resource to both departmental inquiries. He is with Future Safe, and he is a sociologist with a specific focus on crime and poverty. So I am taking this very seriously. I am concerned. I think to myself in all of these things, how would I want my child to be treated? If some member of my family was at the prison, how would I want them to be treated? Well, they have to be there. How should the prison operate? How should the government industrial school operate? We're going to do a deep dive into both these institutions, and we are going to address the issues that are rampant at both. I'm going to turn this over now to my friend, Minister Kurt Humphrey, and he can better assist in the area of government social policy and what is in the pipeline to address some of these concerns that have been raised.
Thank you very kindly, Minister. A very special good afternoon to all the public, to all in the press. Thank you for joining us, especially at such short notice on this very important conversation. I must begin by saying I'm very pleased with what the Minister has announced. This situation has troubled me on a very personal level, because I've had the experience of spending significant time at the JAS, some Saturdays working with the young ladies in the institution, and I must tell you that they are some of the brightest young people that I have met. And of course, it would be a tragedy to allow further tragedy to befall them while they're at the institution. In my opinion, there is only one priority. We don't have 2 or 3 priorities in this case. The single priority is the well-being of the children that are involved in this situation. And so the question I think that we have to ask and answer is, what is in the best interest of these children? And when we ask that question, it will force us to look at the policies, the programs, the legislation, the system, to actually take a step back and look at the overall procedures, because at the end of the day, we must do what we have to do to say that we have done all that we can do to be able to protect the children. And so we must take a long-term position as well as a short-term position. So even as we announce these committees that I believe have important work, and that I'm looking forward to the results of the committees, and as the Minister announced, it will be 3 months. I'm looking forward to the results at the end of those 3 months. There are also some long-term things that I think we also have to address with the same urgency, and perhaps be able to report to the public periodically on those long-term issues as we go forward. I think that is going to be important, because what matters at the end of the day is how do we present, propose, construct the architecture that would allow us to have a modern Barbados as it relates to our social services sector and our social sector generally. And, you know, Minister once had a responsibility for water. And those of you who follow our situation with water, our pipes are 100 years old. And a lot of the water that leaves the reservoir never makes it to your tap. A lot of it is lost along the way. And in a real sense, the social services sector is now basically the same thing. A lot of our young people along the way are lost, and they never make it, we never see the fullest potential either. And why is that? We have a colonial system that still guides our social services sector, our social sector. Our systems are still antiquated. We're still guided by the same policies almost of the welfare laws, the poor laws. It is a system that needs immediate review, and one that we hope to be able to review extremely quickly in the short term. I do agree that this situation cannot continue. I think about, as the Minister also said, my own family. You know, all of us can just look at our family, at least within 2 circles of our outer family, and find some person in the family who is either already involved in the juvenile justice system or in the adult system. It is just the way small societies are. And so we have to take a view that this could happen to you, that this could be your story. In fact, this is your story. This is the Barbadian story, and all of us have to work together to be able to address it. And so many people may ask, what is the government doing about this? What are we doing to be able to address these situations that are before us? It is important for us to recognize that we must have social sector reform, one. And then we must also have social services sector reform, and I'll explain the difference. Our wider social sector involves the reform that we are doing in healthcare, the reform that we are doing in education, the reform at QEH, the reform in housing, just a general reform. I think this is perhaps the most ambitious social sector reform that any government has undertaken in Barbados. And this is necessary, because at the end of the day, it is people that we are trying to serve. And so we have to be able to do these things. If we look at what is happening at GIS, in many ways, that is the last few steps, the last few rungs on the ladder. It means that all the other systems have failed. And we cannot just address the last 2 rungs, we have to address the total system, and that is what we are hoping to achieve. I think we have to also, as the Minister alluded to address our penal system, our juvenile justice system, our criminal system. In fact, Barbados is ranked now at 14th, the 14th highest rate of incarceration. I think it is 328 out of every 100,000 people. That is insane for a country as peaceful as Barbados and as progressive as Barbados is. So there's work for us to be able to do, and we have to be able to break these colonial ties that do not serve us. They no longer serve us. I also feel that a big part of our push and effort must be on community-based reform, community-based education, engaging the communities as we try to go forward. Now, I've already spoken in public about the social services sector reform, and I would like to go through that in a little bit of detail. I want to explain why I think the Department of Family Services is going to be so important, and how this plays into the overall system that we are trying to address, and the changes that we are trying to make. But it is clear, as a matter of fact, when I took this ministry, when it was offered to me, thankfully, by the Prime Minister, one of the things that was made clear to me was that this term in government belongs to the people. This is the people's term. And therefore, you're going to see a lot of social initiatives geared at improving the lives of ordinary people in Barbados. The current construction of the reform will see the National Assistance Board, the Child Care Board, the Welfare Department, and the National Disabilities Unit coming into one. And the intention there is to be able to engage as a family unit, not in the silos that we've traditionally engaged in, but to engage as a family and to bring corrective policies, but also to build transformative policies, to stop the bleeding before people are actually cut, in a way. And that is what we're hoping to be able to do. And 2 bills that are very, very important that are going to be before the House. We are hoping to have these bills before the House in June. Will be the Child Protection Bill, which is with my ministry, and the Child Justice Bill, which is with the Minister who just spoke, with his ministry. And this is going to be very important. I have already said in the Child Protection Bill, I think issues like mandatory reporting is going to be important. I think in a way, in both bills, we have to look at the justice system to make sure that children are protected. So I was thinking, we mentioned a family court. I'm thinking perhaps we should go even further to have a child court. And these are the kind of things that we have to be able to look at. I think it's going to be important that we move away from just having this kind of justice system that is focused on retributive justice. You know, you do a crime, you get punished, and move toward restorative justice, which is going to be vital in changing this society around and working with people and working with children as children. It is also clear to me, and it has been very clear in my interactions, having spent a lot of time working in this particular area, that many of the children who present in these circumstances have been abused one way or the other. They've had a hard life one way or the other. They've been exposed to things that children should not be exposed to. I've already expressed that I think in many cases you'd have a court case for a child abused at 8. The case isn't heard till the child is 18. By the time you see the child, you see a woman who's been broken, and you judge that woman, not taking into consideration the people who broke that child at 8. And these are the things, these things are flaws in our system, and that we have to be able to address them. And that is what we're hoping to be able to address in these bills. But we have to be able to do better than we're currently doing. And we accept that it's not going to be easy. It never is. Cultural change is never going to be easy, but it is necessary. And I hope that we can work with Barbados as we roll out some of these plans over the next few weeks, as we roll out some of these plans over the next few months, that we are able to engage. And then lastly, I think it is extremely important that in these conversations we talk to the children. Children have been very clear. I liked how the children came forward recently and spoke about CSCs and were able to push the needle forward. I think if we're genuine in our efforts, we have to bring children to the table too. The persons who are affected at GIS. If we want to change the justice system for adults, the adults who are affected, the people who spend the most time engaging the system can probably teach you the most. And these are the things that I believe are important. But for the sake of our society, and for the sake of our country, and surely for the sake of our children, I hope that we can take a mature perspective and approach to dealing with this issue. I hope that we can give the children the kind of privacy and confidentiality that the situation demands. I do not understand why some of these things happen today and are in the press tomorrow. There's some things that children must be allowed to have their dignity. And the minister has given the assurance that he's going to investigate it, and I would hope Barbadians would give us the time to be able to do. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Minister.
To just say one thing.
Sorry, go ahead, Minister.
Sorry. Just to say just to correct something. The departmental inquiry into the prison is supposed to be completed within 3 months, but the departmental inquiry into the operations of the government industrial school and the allegations there is a much shorter timeline for that. That is 6 weeks. That is perhaps the shortest timeline that we could give to properly effect a full investigation and to come up with proper findings on which we can act, on which I can act. So I just wish to clarify that the departmental inquiry into the prison, into the government industrial school, we expect that report to be back by the 15th of June. Everything we put in place to facilitate the smooth operation of that inquiry, to ensure there are no obstructions, and to ensure that everybody who has to be heard or who wants to be heard is heard. I got a message just now, someone saying, but nobody's going to talk to the girls. I wish to again make this pellucidly clear. Every single young lady who is with us is going to have the opportunity to give evidence, to make her claims, to make any claims of concerns they have, where their needs are not being met, where they have suggestions that can lead to better provision of care for them, whether there are allegations of any impropriety by members of staff or other wards. The young ladies will have their say, their voices will be heard. This is not an attempt to shut up anybody, to sweep anything under the carpet, or to hush anything up. The fact that we've allocated a time frame for this inquiry of 6 weeks shows how serious we are about getting to the bottom of this as quickly as possible, because whatever decisions need to be made following that inquiry, we are going to make them as quickly as we can. We also we obviously have to do this in conjunction with the Ministry of the Public Service and the Protective Services Commission to make sure that no rights of any staff members are equally infringed in the inquiry. But as I said, everything will be put in place to ensure that the inquiry can proceed without obstruction, it can get to the bottom of all allegations. So I'm urging the public, we are going to make contact information for the inquiry public. If you know of something and you wish to give evidence, you will be facilitated. You will be facilitated in the giving of your evidence. If you're a previous ward at the government industrial school and you have something to say, you can come forward and say. Anybody who's involved in the school now, be it staff, be it a ward, be it a parent of a ward, they will have the opportunity to say what they have to say, and all evidence will be taken and will be considered and will be factored. I just want to make that really, really clear. This is going to be as open as we can be, and we are going to properly look at the report, and we are going to take decisions which are in the best interests of our wards. The government industrial school exists to serve the wards of the school. It exists as a part of our justice system. It exists to help young persons in Barbados who are in need of help. If we are not in a position to do that, then we have serious problems. So we need to get to the bottom. We need to shift out truth from rumor. We need to get to the bottom and investigate all complaints, and we need to make reasonable and reasoned decisions which are in the best interests of the wards at the government industrial school.
Thank you very much, Minister. As we open for questions, I know we have Maria Bradshaw from Nation News and CBC in our Zoom waiting. Colleagues, the floor is yours.
Good evening.
Good evening, Maria. Go ahead.
Yes, my question is that we heard that, I think it was 2 weeks ago, after there appeared to be some more trouble at the school. Now it seems like we're hearing the same thing from you again, and the same language. And I think that the public will want to know now, how can you assure us, the public, the wards of the school, the parents, the guardians, that this time around, this investigation is indeed going to take place, and that in 6 weeks' time, as you said, we will know the way forward and that changes will be implemented apart from the girls just moving to another location. Thank you.
In the grand scheme of things, 6 weeks is not a long time to wait. This is not an inquiry with an open end. I am not saying we're having a departmental inquiry and please stay tuned and wait for the results. We are saying that we are putting a time limit of this inquiry on a 6-week time limit for the report to be done into this inquiry. And Maria, in all fairness, on the last occasion, the public asked and you asked for an independent inquiry into the situation that happened there. You could not get more independent than us involving the police and asking the police to investigate that circumstance. We have to proceed, or the police have to proceed on evidence. If nobody wished to say anything or give any evidence in relation to that, then what else can we do? Once again, this is open. This is an open inquiry. All concerns will be allowed to contend. If the same persons who were involved or on whose basis concern was raised on the last occasion wish to now weigh in again and wish in this instance or this time to give evidence, then they're not precluded from giving evidence. They can give evidence, and if that evidence is given to the inquiry, then we're going to have to take steps based on that evidence. And the inquiry is going to have to make a finding on that evidence. As I said, Maria, 6 weeks is not a long time to wait. It is not a long time, right? And we have listed the persons who are responsible for this particular inquiry. These are Barbadians, well-respected Barbadians who are now giving of their time, who have no axe to grind, have no interest to serve, who are only interested in getting to the bottom of this and making recommendations on which I can act that are in the best interests of the young ladies. All I'm going to ask is that you allow the investigation to run its course for the 6 weeks. For the 6 weeks. And at the end of that, we can report to you. Report to the public of Barbados. This is not open-ended. It has a 6-week timeline. And that is, I am sure, probably the shortest inquiry you've ever heard in Barbados.
Maria, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, to the minister again, please. Thank you. We heard reports from Marsha Hines Lane, Clark, I can't remember, but she complained repeatedly and bitterly about the solitary confinement at GIS, and she also indicated that 2 of the girls were going to be put in cells on their return to the institution. She also spoke against the physical examination of the girls and said the parents had told the police that they were not in agreement of the girls undergoing a physical examination. And we know you just spoke about archaic laws at the school. And I remember on the last occasion, which was a year ago, you also came out and said you were totally against the confinement of these girls in cells, that they were not prisoners and they were actually at the school to be reformed. And I would like to know if you, as the minister, had the authority to say these girls, have the authority to say not to place the girls in cells and also not to subject them to the physical examination.
Maria, I cannot tell the police how to conduct their investigations or what their protocols or practices should be. When the young ladies came into the custody of the police, they were in the custody of the police pending the police investigation into the circumstances on which they left the institution. When they were taken up to the facility to be held overnight, that was under the police direction, and the police directed what happens with them. The police have their protocols as to what investigation, what examinations happen to persons in custody, and that is entirely outside of my control.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if anybody else wants to ask any questions. I have one more.
I do have one, Maria.
Okay, sorry. You go ahead.
Well, more than one. Good afternoon to you, Minister. Good afternoon to everyone in the room. Wendy Burke, CBC. Now, what I want to know right now, Minister, is the current state of the 2 girls who have turned themselves in and the measures that have been put at Barrows to ensure that another escape is not likely from those 2 or any of the others who remain. That's my first question, and then I have another question to address to Minister Humphrey.
Wendy, you're putting me, thank you for your question, and you're putting me in a bit of a spot. I actually cannot provide information on the young ladies the young ladies have been returned to custody, and they're getting the care that is required for their particular circumstance. Each one's circumstance is different, but they're being cared for as best we can. I cannot be any more specific than that. with respect to the security arrangements at the government industrial school, equally, the security arrangements for the government industrial school or the prisons or the police arrangements of person in custody are a matter of national security. What I can tell you is that we identified obviously certain weaknesses in our systems that allowed the young ladies to leave the facility, and we have addressed as many of those as we could within the context of it being an old facility and the facility being what it is. But I mean, quite frankly, there were some pretty slack protocols and procedures that came up as a result of the investigation into this. We have attempted to tighten the ones that we could, where it was human error or other ways we've attempted to deal with that. But equally, there's an investigation going on into the circumstances that led to the girls leaving the institution, and I can't say anything more than that because I cannot prejudice that investigation. We are doing as much as we can to address the shortcomings, and I wish to assure the public that the young ladies who absconded and who were returned to our care are getting the best treatment that they can get for whatever ails them at this point in time.
Thank you kindly. If I could speak with Minister Humphrey now on the legislation part of it that is to come.
Wendy, go ahead.
Okay. Now, you noted that our children we must not look at punishment, but more or less a re-engagement, a reintroduction into society. And I'm just wondering, in terms of what is set out in this legislation, if we have made any specific differences in terms of how we treat to children who are already institutionalized versus the children that are out here in the wider society. Like wards of the state versus my child, your child.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Just to be clear, so there are two pieces of legislation. The first piece of legislation is the Child Protection Bill, which falls within my ministry, and the second is the Child Justice Bill, which falls within the Minister of Home Affairs' responsibility. I think beyond the legislation, and this is the point that I think we are going to be at pains to make now, beyond the legislation, what we need to have is a completely different approach to the way we deal with our children. So that currently, the system that we currently have is built on the idea that you've committed a crime, you must pay for it, right? That's basically what it is. What we're saying is that we need to have a much larger approach where restorative justice, and there's so much talk on this in the literature, restorative justice looks at building from the ground up. So community engagement, community policing, engaging people at every stage of the way. What I don't want us to have in Barbados, what I fear we may have, is a situation where we resort to having legislation to correct a problem that is not a legal problem. I think we have to look at the structure of our families, importantly, understanding our family situation, dealing with the current realities for Caribbean families. You have to look at our communities, the role of the church, so that we have a real restorative justice approach, which is going to be important. And so restorative justice is just bigger than the piece of legislation. What it will mean, though, eventually, is that instead of a judge only having the authority to do this and to do that, if this, then that, almost like, computer programming, if A, then B, then there are going to be a wider range of options that will allow the child to be able to benefit from other opportunities. Those currently do not exist in the way that I imagine that we would like to see them exist in Barbados. And surely within the child protection legislation, I think it is going to be important that we have conversations with the NGO community, we have conversations with the civil society and so on, so that in the way that I imagine this, Wendy, really, is that the legal system becomes the last part of this conversation. And the conversation, therefore, needs to be reversed. So the first part of the conversation is about building a proper society. How does poverty impact on this? Why do we have a disproportionate share of poor people or poor people before the judicial system? Why do we have a larger share of poor people whose children end up in institutions? Those are the questions that we have to ask and answer. They're not legal questions. But yes, there are going to be some amendments to the legislation as well. I hope that answers the question.
Wendy, before I go back to Maria, do you have any further questions?
No, I think that's it for me, Lisa.
Okay, great. Maria?
Yes, thank you. Oh, we heard, in terms of the matter that came up before the court a few days ago, we heard that there was an order made. First of all, we heard that there were allegations made against an official at the school, and that there was an order made by the judge that there would be no interaction. And I would want to know if an investigation is also taking place into that situation, and if that official remains in place.
Maria, I took great pains when I spoke initially to say that I am exceedingly disturbed by recent allegations and recent concerns raised. Now, I have to be very careful what I say, because there's a matter, yes, before the court, and I can't comment on the matter before the court. Any order of the court, Maria, that is made that affects any department under my ministry is going to be obeyed. So if any order of the court was made, then the terms of that order are going to be followed to the letter. I am not here fighting a cause for anybody. I am not here trying to protect anybody. I am trying to get to the bottom of it all, trying to understand what the truth of all the matters is, and trying to take the appropriate action that is warranted by the facts and that is in the best interest of the wards that are under our care. I cannot comment any further on the court action other than to say any order of the court that comes to my notice or that is served on me or that concerns anything under my ministry or my department will be obeyed.
Thank you. And to Mr. Humphrey, we're hearing that the Child Care Board is saying there are over 4,000 cases of abuse against children. And I don't know if that has been broken into categories that we could hear how many were sexual, how many were physical. But can you say if the online school where children were at home now for almost 2 years, if that situation would have led to this increase in abuse? And while we are looking at all of this changing of legislation, etc., what about the perpetrators of the abuse? Are these people being held accountable? Are they being charged? Are they appearing before the court? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. So last month was Child Abuse Awareness Month. We spent a lot of time going through the statistics. In fact, I gave a full breakdown for the last many months of the cases of sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. So those numbers are available. I don't have them here, but I could give those numbers to you when I get off air. So we have those numbers for every month by category. I do not think it is a case where we've seen an increase. In fact, when I made the presentation, then I said we've not seen an increase, we've not seen a decrease either. And that is my concern. I am hopeful that we can see a decrease in the cases of abuse. In relation to your other question, as it relates to the children who were home, the school environment, is actually one of the places where you get information on abuse. when children go to school and they talk to other children, you in fact get more information than a child who is home, because a child who is home really doesn't have anyone that they can talk to. And that a lot of cases come out when children are in the school environment. In conversations with the Child Care Board, as recent as just yesterday, it is the feeling that as school continues that we're actually going to have more reports as children talk about some of the things that they actually experienced during the lockdown. Which is not to say that there were not cases. It is just that those cases probably, in some instances, have not yet been able to be reported and recorded. And I do hope that if indeed there have been more cases, that we are in a position to deal with it. As it relates to the perpetrators, that is what the new Child Protection Bill must do. Because you could have a case in Barbados where a child, 13 years old, could be pregnant and refuse to tell who the father is. The mother might refuse, the mother of the child might refuse to say who the father is. There's no mandatory reporting. And mandatory reporting is going to make a big difference. In a lot of sexual abuse cases, there's reasons why the children don't say, but they don't say in many cases. There are all kinds of economic reasons. In many cases, women, because men think in Barbados, and I mean, people are uncomfortable when they speak like this, but men feel, many men, that women now are progressing and all is well, but it's not the case. There's still some very uneven, unequal distribution of power in a lot of households. So there might be a case oftentimes where the men or the woman, if it's a male being abused, might be the dominant person in the household economically, and the abuse is not reported. So we have to be able to change that and to make sure we have mandatory reporting of abuse. The other thing, and I mentioned it earlier, is that the system is just too slow. So that you have children being abused in year 1 and the case not properly being heard till year 10. And that to me is a perversion of justice, and it is something that we have to be able to address. That is why I feel that the current bill looks at a family court to deal with these issues. I really think we should go further toward having a child court to deal specifically with the issues pertaining to children, and that maybe we can get these things addressed a lot faster. The other point that I would make is that there is a responsibility on you and on me and on all of us who know of cases of children being abused to come forward and say something. How many times has there been a case of abuse where somebody say, I know that man was doing that to her for a long, long time? Or of a boy saying, I know that mother was beating that boy for a long, long time. And nobody says anything to the relevant authorities. I also have spoken very sternly with all the institutions over which I now have supervision, including the Child Care Board. They understand that my position is that when these matters are reported, that there has to be meaningful intervention, meaning that the cases have to be, obviously the persons have to be interviewed, the cases investigated, but that every effort must be made for children to be able to have justice. I have been very clear with all of my institutions. People have to be treated better when they interact with the social services sector, whether it is NAB, NDU, welfare, child care board. People have to feel that they have been heard. I also feel that when people make a report, we have to make it easier for persons to make those reports, but we also have to account to the people who have reported. Many people feel that when they engage the social services sector that they get no justice. It can't work. And so I've been very clear in relation to how we must proceed going forward. I expect that over the next few months, persons are going to see a different level of engagement. So in relation to the question, yes, I think that the perpetrators in many cases get off too easy, but it's not going to end so. Thanks.
Maria and Wendy, just doing a final check to see if you have any further questions. Maria, do you have any further questions?
No, that is it. Thank you.
Okay, Wendy, are you good? Yeah, I'm not hearing Wendy. Okay, Noddy, Wendy's fine. Okay, Minister Abrams, I'm giving you closing comments.
I want to assure the public this is not a cover-up. I am taking this very, very seriously. I am concerned. I'm concerned about the welfare of the children. They have to be heard, and all of the things that are swirling have to be investigated. And we will take action. I will take action based on the findings of fact outlined and the recommendations as well. I just want to make this one appeal. As we push to get things out first, or as people push to get things out first, and people push to get likes on social media, and people push to get forwards, I want the public to understand these are children that we are dealing with. We have to try as much as possible to preserve their privacy, to preserve their dignity, and to try to preserve their self-esteem. All of these things swirling, all of the rumors, all of, in some cases, unfounded statements, all of these things swirling affect the children. They hear. They know what is being said. It affects them as well. My concern is the protection, security, rehabilitation, getting help to those who need it for the wards who are in my care. And I also have to balance that with being fair to everybody else who might be named in any of the rumors or any of the allegations, or the staff who work at the institution. It's not an easy situation. But as I said, it is only 6 weeks that we're asking the public to crave their indulgence with. We will get to the bottom of the allegations. We will take action in the best interests of the wards who are within our care. Their safety, their health, their security, and their rehabilitation is paramount for me. And that is my promise to you.
Thank you very much, Minister. That was the Minister of Home Affairs and Information, the Honourable Wilfred Abrams. Let me also thank the Minister of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, the Honourable Kirk Humphrey, members of the media, and you for joining. Do have yourself